Baby. Part 3. In case you guys don't know, there are 2 other parts here on the Patreon that we went through before. And they wouldn't let us do a third for whatever the reasons may be. We all know what that is. Just trying to get the set up here for you guys. I don't have my original setup like before. So hopefully, that isn't working. Hopefully, let me see if this can hold up. This thing's really slick. Try not to move. All right.
Impregnated with the holy seed of Asar that she had taken from him when she formed herself into the bird, as you see the falcon. You know it's a set because that's her glyph for a set. She is now impregnated with the holy child. Here we see the earliest holy child concept of a virgin birth story. Here's the prototype of it all. This was the origin where people would come in. These temples were covered in sand. After they took everything they wanted, then all it was covered up. Time took them over. Now we're dug out to come back to see where the story came from. The earliest Immaculate Conception and Resurrection story. Unfortunately, you can't see her on the donkey because that is too obvious right here. But your ancestors had the first concept of the resurrection, the virgin birth, and the world's first holy city. Long before Mecca was a holy city, long before Jerusalem was a holy city, your ancestors had the world's first holy city and a city called Abtu, who the Arabs called Abydos. Right there at the temple of Seti I, going back over 3,000 years, you see Isis formed herself into a bird, this beautiful African goddess. She forms herself into a bird and descends on top of Osiris's penis to take the seed from him back to her womb to produce the first virgin birth, the Immaculate Conception story told 4,100 years BC. This is where white folks came and copied it from your ancestors, even tried to chisel out the penis because they couldn't deal with the sacredness of the body. But look at this. Notice that the great god Asaru is lying out flat with his crown, with Isis perpendicular to his penis. Let's go to the Vatican where the Pope, one of the popes took the same concept. There's the crown, the head's crown of Asaru. And now you see perpendicular to his penis is the European Mary and Jesus. The one thing the Pope don't got is Asaru. He clearly had the penis because we believed in the resurrection. You know, our ancestors wrapped that penis up, wrapped that body up because the penis was sacred for the resurrection. And don't get white folks' Western perverted mind and say there's something wrong with the penis. Ain't nothing wrong when the lights are out and you're under the sheet. Unless it ain't working. Unless you got somebody laying next to you, got a broken wrist. So you're going to resurrect with a wrecked penis. So you see the old Pope, they didn't have none of that. And they still don't have none of that. Copying your story and can't get it right. Can't get the whole thing. Let's go on now, showing the great God Asaru is resurrected. Showing the resurrected penis. Showing he will resurrect. From his seed will be the S-O-N son, just like the S-U-N son born from the macro womb of the universe. This is Kepra, meaning to self-create himself. He will resurrect from the dead. This is a story that your ancestors created over 4,100 years BC. So, how can I accept some white version of it when your ancestors started this? Let's go further. Let's look at this symbol that goes back to Constantine. Have you seen this symbol before? This is the monogram for Christ. It represents resurrection. How many of you have seen that symbol before? Raise your hand. Quite a few of you, right? But why did Constantine use this symbol for resurrection? This is the symbol that they used for resurrection, not the cross. Why? Because this was one of the early Greek letters. The X represented to resurrect from the dead. The P was no other than the penis of the great god Asaru that goes back 4,100 years BC, the first black god of resurrection. Just take his penis and put it right down between the X right here, and you would have the monogram for Christ right here. Only through opening up my African ancestral genetic memory bank can I see this. If I was locked up in the white folks' story, there's no way I could see this because I would be locked up that that's African stuff is pagan, it's heathen. I gotta stay away from it. That's why they want you to stay away from it, because Constantine copied these concepts right from your African ancestors. Why the penis resurrect? Because without an erect penis, there's no life. No seed is going to come out of a limp penis. So the penis must be erect. So that's why our ancestors had no problem showing the penis was sacred, because it represented resurrection. And also, brothers and sisters, that right before sunrise, that's when the male gets his erection. That's why, sisters, if you have any problems with the brother, just wait for sunrise. Everything will be all right. Constantine took this obelisk from Africa and placed it right down in the St. Peter Square. Is that why they call it Peter Square? Because it represents Osiris' penis for resurrection? But by placing this obelisk down in the St. Peter Square was laying the foundation of European Christianity. That's why Africans could not know they were copying the concepts from African people. Right there in St. Peter Square, when old Archdevil Pope comes out, and he looks out over and sees the obelisk that Constantine stole from Africa and placed down in St. Peter Square on Easter Sunday, it represents resurrection. But how many people know that that's an African symbol that they took and stole, and not only the symbol, but the concept of the spirituality that they call religion today? When you look and see the Tekenu was a symbol for his transformation and resurrection. It was not about phallic worship. It was a symbol of communication that they were using, because that's what the Meta Nature was made up of, symbols for the highest form of communication. You can understand this transformation. But when we look at the old Greeks, they didn't understand it. They took the Tekenu and actually drew and carved the actual thing in front of their temple. Now eventually, it ended up on top of their temples. It became the Greek church. So when you look at the arch of the church and look at this, right before sunrise, they even got the sun right there, what happens? Resurrection. So the steeple actually goes back to a SARS resurrection that you see the Greeks corrupted it, and you can see it right here. See, through symbols, you can transcend time and space and break through the matrix of white supremacy. We're like an insect in a spider web of white supremacy. Like an insect flying through space, it gets caught in this web. The spider, the white supremacy spider, doesn't eat it. He lets him struggle. Here we are fighting, struggling. I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm this, I'm that, and all of it started with us. And as we struggle and work, all of our energy is out, and white supremacy spider says it's time to go and not to eat the insect, but sucks his insides out. The likeness of the insect is still there. The likeness of us, or Africans in America, and this white supremacy spider web is still here. But they're sucking the insides of us out, so we'll never know who we are, so we become the walking dead through their religion. Can't see a resurrection. But the Greeks even took, here, this was phallic worship, what they were doing. This was penis worship, what they were doing, because they didn't understand it. So they actually carved the penis right there on the church. I mean, right there in Greece. Still there for you to see. So don't get mad because I'm showing it. They got it right there live for everybody to see. If you go to Greece. But look, see, when you're free, you can see everything. 12th century came here, and I saw this picture. Now keep in mind, Mary Magdalene is supposed to be the only one who saw the resurrection. Is that right? Now look at this. So right before sunrise, there's a resurrection. Now what is this? Wait, I'll get closer to you. Now if that's not testicles and the penis, because she said he resurrected, he's alive. Because they hung him on, we'll deal with later in a minute, hung him on a tree and the blood went down to the penis and then resurrected. That's why they cut off the black man's penis. It was a symbol to make sure we never resurrect. When they hung the brother, the blood went to the penis resurrected. It was here, their white racist Klan Masons cut off the penis symbolizing that you'll never resurrect as a race again. You will always be my slave. That's why you see the feminization of the black male today. And nobody can't talk about faggotitis out here, because that's gay bashing. If you want that young man to grow up to be a strong black man, you better start talking about what they're doing to you out here. They don't like to see a black man and a black woman together. That means resurrection. It was Theodosius in the 4th century AD. Justinian in the 6th century AD. They closed down this temple of a sect who they call ISIS because they were copying the story, stealing the symbols from the temple. So if the temple was supposed to be so pagan, as they tell us, so heathen, why were they stealing the concept of the virgin birth, the immaculate conception, the symbol of the cross representing peace, and many other symbols? Why? Just like Constantine also came down. Why? Because they know that they wouldn't even have a story if it was not for your story. And your story is the basis and the foundation of spiritual liberation. The temple of Aset, brothers and sisters, and behind you, if you can look very closely, you can see how Aset was chiseled out. I said to you yesterday, she was chiseled out, but notice that the sun was not chiseled out. Why is it that the sun is not chiseled out? Because we still go to church on Sunday, and have sunrise service, so they're here, they're still deifying the sun. But you're truly the children of the sun, because Ra has kissed you from the dawn of time. But that area, you see a set throne on top of the sun, symbolizing that is a set. So when Theodosius and Justinian came here in the 4th and 6th century AD, they're the ones who closed this temple down. Not only did they close it down, but they also started to plagiarize many ideas from this temple where it ended up in the Western world. For instance, you see the Ark of Aset that you see right behind me. It's from here where the Ark was taken out from the holies of the holies, and the priests, the curry head priests at this time, were called the pastori. That's where the Western world got the term pastor from. Because during this time of the Ptolemies, these were the pastori priests who carried the ark over to that island called Bigger Island, as I showed you right here, the same idea. Where the carrying of the ark of the Black Madonna in France, as I said before, this temple, as I repeat it again, was named after this temple right here, Père-Sec, later became Paris, France, and the Notre Dame temple was copied from here, and you see the ark right here. Where they still have, at this time, Mary being black and Jesus being black. Look at the white men carrying the Ark of Mary, which was no other than a takeoff of the Ark of Isis that you see right here in the temple from the original Opet festival, showing where the priest took Isis' Ark to go and meet her husband Osiris. At this time, they still had Mary as black. She was not white here, showing the procession that they have in Europe that was originally copied from African people. And keep in mind, it was St. Luke is the one who made the first Mary as being black. That was St. Luke. And the back part of the Mimizi house, which is the birthing house, you will see the goddess Aset. And here's the goddess Aset right here, but you'll notice that she's chiseled out. What makes the Italian, European Madonna and Child more sacred than yours when you had it first? She was called the Theotokos. What is the Theotokos? She was called the Mother of God. She was worshipped all over Europe, known as the Herculean worship of the goddess Aset. So here we see an ancient spiritual story passed down through the millenniums, and we have no idea that its origin started right here, but yet this one is supposed to be so pagan and so heathen. Well, if it was supposed to be so pagan and so heathen, why would they copy the same exact idea of the Madonna and Child? So here's where the original story began at, brothers and sisters. So that's what we're trying to reveal to you. These things are not told to these groups that are coming up in here. They're not telling her about the original goddess right here where it all began, where she was de-Africanized at the conference of Ephesus in 431 AD. You need to study those ecumenical conferences, because it's at those ecumenical conferences where they literally copy this from. That's why they're more interested in what I'm saying over there, looking at you, because we're over here telling the truth. They're not even paying no attention to their guide over there. All right? Now let's go up into the Mimizi house. We have to line up like this here. Brothers and sisters, again, we want to show you some reliefs. It took me years coming here studying these reliefs on the temples. Thank you, sister. and seeing where many of the concepts were literally taken from African people. Keep in mind when Theodosius and Justinian came in to Africa, for many years they came in as plunderers of this temple right here. And why did they close it down? As I said before, they closed it down because they were stealing many of their theological concepts right up out of Africa. And that's what we want to deal with right here. Now here we have Isis, as our ancestors called her, a Set, with her holy child. Why did they chisel it out? Justinian is the one who closed this temple down, where many of our Nubian brothers and sisters used this temple and saw Isis and Horus as sacred until the coming of Justinian, when they closed down to forbid our brothers and sisters to worship the first Madonna and child. The first Trinity came directly from African people. Why did they chisel it out? Because you were on this temple. And here she is right here. Now, this is the African goddess that goes back 4,100 years BC, the Madonna and child. You see her lactating the holy child Horus right here. This was the African goddess that had to be chiseled out. And sister, you come over here for a second. Come right on over here for a second. All right? We see something here? This goddess here was our soul, was our spirit. And that's what had to be eradicated to start the spiritual enslavement of African people. So the stopping of the worshiping the goddess was literally the stopping of the worshiping of our women, our children, and us as an African family. That's why they came in and tried to hack her out, as you see on the reliefs right here. Coming back for an eyewitness account and the field work that we have to do, come back to look at these reliefs and study these reliefs, and not come back as tourists and run through the temples and not being able to break down some of the reliefs to show you where the Western world concepts were literally taken from your African ancestors. And I would like to read a piece by Wallet Budge before I get into this particular relief. And he says in his book, Gods of the Egyptians, book 2 on page 220, now this is what he says here: the pictures and the sculptures wherein Isis is represented in the act of suckling her child Horus form the foundation for the Christian figures in the paintings of the Madonna and child. Several of the incidents of the wandering of the Virgin with the child in Egypt, as recorded in the apocryphal Gospels, reflect the scenes in the life of Isis as described in the text found on the Medinet stela. And many of the attributes of Isis, the god mother, the mother of Horus, are identical with those of Mary, the mother of Christ. This is Wallace Budge now, you see that? Giving it up. This is a white man giving it up. Okay, right. The writers of the apocryphal Gospels intended to pay additional honor to Mary, the Virgin, by ascribing to her the attributes which up to that time of the advent of Christianity, they had regarded as a peculiar property of Isis. And if parallel between the mythological history of Isis and Horus and the history of the Mary and the child be considered, it is difficult to see how they could possibly avoid perceiving in the teaching of Christianity's reflection of the best and most spiritual doctrines of the Egyptian religion. He goes on to say, the belief in the conception of Horus by Isis through the power given her by Thoth, that we just dealt with in the Amizi house, the intelligence or mind of the God of the universe, and in the resurrection of the body, and of the everlasting life, is with the beginning of history in Egypt. He goes on. We may note, too, by passing the probability that many of the heresies of the early Christian church in Egypt were caused by the survival of ideas and beliefs connected with the old, as he calls it, native gods, which the converts to Christianity wish to adapt to their new creed. By this, however, as it may, the knowledge of the ancient Egyptian religion, which we now possess, fully justifies the assertion that the rapid growth and progress of Christianity in Egypt were due mainly to the fact that the new religion, which was preached there by Saint Mark and his immediate followers in all its essentials, so closely resembled that which was the outcome of the worship of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, that popular opposition was entirely disarmed. In certain places in the south of Egypt, Philae, where you are right now, the worship of Osiris and Isis maintains its own until the beginning of the 5th century of our era. Through this was in reality due to the support which it received from the Nubians. But speaking generally, at this period in all other parts of Egypt, Mary, the Virgin, and Christ had taken its places of Isis and Horus. and the god mother, or the mother of the god, was no longer Isis, but Mary, whom the monophysites styled after her. Now that's Wallace Budge, talking about your African ancestral history. Now let's break it down. On this relief, brothers and sisters, you can see many concepts where they came in, as I said, like scavengers, and picked different pieces. On this particular relief, you can see where the Western world, through Judaism, took a piece of a concept of the creation story from. You can see where the Greek philosophers took a concept of Greek philosophy from. And you can also see where Christianity took a concept, European Christianity took a concept from. So let's break it down. Again, carved in stone on the temple of Aset, right here on the island of Philae. It is here. It tells where the Western world literally came like scavengers and took various scenes to make up the Western world. And one of those scenes is we see that Hermes Trismegistus in Greek mythology, they literally took it from Tahuti. It is here that our ancestors had a study from the 42 books of Tahuti, representing science, law, and intelligence, who was represented as the ibis bird that you saw. We saw those little white birds that we saw come over here. So our ancestors looked at nature. We didn't worship the bird, but it was an attribute of science, attribute of intelligence. Tahuti writing down the deeds of our life on earth as we lived here. This is where the Western philosophical thought, Greeks took their concept of Hermes Trismegistus from Tahuti, now called thought too. So we see Judaism took God Khnum, fashioning man out of clay, and called him Jehovah. Notice the God Khnum fashioning man on the potter's wheel out of clay. This is where Judaism took a portion of this to make up their Genesis story with the Sanhedrins around 250 BC. From this relief right here of God fashioning man and woman on the potter's wheel. And they took other concepts of Atum from Heliopolis creation story, or the city of On, to make up their Adam as a man, when actually it was Atum the son. And we see European Christianity took from the goddess Isis and Horus and made up the European, again, let me express, the European version of Mary and Jesus. Copied directly from these reliefs right here. So you got Greek philosophy, where it took from Tahuti and called it Hermes Trismegistus. You got the Jehovah Genesis creation story and the Bible, where they took from Khnum, fashioning man on the potter's wheel out of clay, and they turned it into making man out of clay, Adam out of clay. And you also got Christianity right here showing Isis lactating or breastfeeding the holy child Horus, who was born of immaculate conception and virgin birth. Three concepts just from this one relief. You see, all carved in stone. As you can see the line, one dark, one light, showing this temple was under the water. Nobody could come back and read this. And that's why over here, if you look against this wall right here, much of it, they try to chisel it all out. But our ancestors wrote endlessly as though one day we would forget our story. One day we would not know who we are. One day that the only thing that we put on our genetic memory bank would be an alien, a conqueror's story. In our mind, our story would not be told. And that's why Justinian in the 6th century AD came in and closed these temples down, because they were copying Christianity, the theological concepts from African people. And we'll get more into that during the lecture when we have the lecture series this afternoon. I want to even go further to show you, sisters, that y'all sacred. You are goddesses. And that's the problem with the brother today, because they took that concept out of his consciousness. That's why the rap groups around there calling her the bees and stuff. Huh? Okay, now look. Isis holding the Ankh of life. We know what the Ankh of life now is, a symbol of her uterus, right? So here, again, I'll show you, showing where the holy child is coming from her womb. See the loop? That's why she's holding it, because she wants the first immaculate conception and the first holy birth is going to come from her. So she's holding the Ankh for life. Can you see it? Not too much glare there, right? That's why the Europeans, when Justinian and the boys Theodosius, they came in, they tried to chisel it out. Couldn't deal with the real immaculate conception, but they weren't talking about one immaculate conception. Our ancestors were telling us on these reliefs that every woman could produce an immaculate conception, provided that she was on the spiritual level and the man was on the spiritual level. The both of them coming together produced immaculate virgin birth, which means a clean birth. But notice they chiseled off the top part of it because that represents the womb. But the other part they kept there to represent the crucifix. You see? That symbol that they didn't take or didn't chisel out was a symbol of the cross. They didn't chisel that one out. So this is another picture of Constantine. Constantine's vision of the cross, which he is pointing to this symbol, Sec Vincius. In this symbol, we shall conquer. Through this symbol, we shall conquer. Supposedly, Constantine got the cross out on the battlefield. Another picture, but now that we know that Constantine came here, now we know where, in fact, Constantine got the cross from. Huh? Right off of your ancestor temples. Has nothing to do with, this is blowing here, has nothing to do with no crucifixion or human sacrifice. Europeans corrupted it. Now we have no understanding or meaning of what the cross means today. And chisel out the Ankh, which is a symbol for life. Peace and life is what our ancestors built with. And it was at the conference of Nicene in 325 AD, is where Europeans got together at this conference and corrupted the African spiritual concepts at this conference. They made Jesus' birthday December the 25th. They all got together, and this is where the transfer from the African spiritual concepts into the European religion took place at this particular conference. When Constantine came here, these temples were already here. He saw crosses everywhere. But here he took the cross and desecrated it. Desecrated it how? By turning it into a crucifix, blood, death, a carnalized. This is how they saw their own image as the Christ, the deification of themselves. So all your energy goes out to the very people that oppress you. So just like the Passion of the Christ, Negroes were passing out in the show. Passing out in the show, falling out. The woman goes, I just couldn't handle it. Here they got you. I mean, the Passion of the Christ of that show, if they told our story and how our Holocaust took place in the Middle Passage, that was the crucifixion right there, brothers and sisters. But you can show our Holocaust all day long, and a Negro won't even share a crocodile tear. But they put that white boy up there on the big screen, and Negroes said they passed out, damn near died in the show, and everything else to make sure to keep up the deification of white folks. All your feeling and pain go out to them. At the same time, when you came out the show and went home and turned on the news, then they took a shot of brother 100 times. No outcry, no protest, no tears. Another crucifixion of an African man in the street. Okay? Sister called the police while she sat in her car. Police came, the Nazi stormtroopers came and didn't even ask her a question, just start shooting in the back of the window. Blew the sister's brains out. Another crucifixion. You are crucified every day in America. That is the crucifixion that's taking place. They train you to deify them. They train you to feel for them. Okay? Because here they want to make sure that when you look at yourself, that you are expendable. You have no feelings for yourself. You only have feelings for your oppressor. It's designed. And the tell-lie vision, the white boy knew what he was doing. Black folks getting too far away from the good book. Getting too far away from Jesus. Jesus! So we got to make a movie for them and get them back in place before they get too far gone. All right? After all, it's Greek. There's no story that you were born in sin in the African Kemetic stories. No story whatsoever. It's only a story that's told for the Europeans to put his hands on you and then baptize you and then tells you that you are born again. I will say it again, your baptism started in your mother's womb. And the amniotic fluid, that divine creator, every molecule, every atom, the DNA structure of your body that is made, the creator made you. African people have a natural innate spirituality. Again, you must destroy the truth to bring forth the lie. We are, as an African people, the unorganized truth. Let me say that again. We are, as African people, the unorganized truth, fighting an organized lie. White folks are organized in everything they do. They got to, because they're the lie. They're lying, stealing, plagiarizing, and everything from you. But the objective is to keep us unorganized. Because as long as we are unorganized, then they can keep up the organized lie. So we are the unorganized truth. But today, in this microcosm, in this trip, you have been the organized truth, okay, fighting the organized lie. Even Dr. George G.M. James told us in his book, The Stolen Legacy, we have to give him respect because his brother's life was taken for writing this book. How the African continent gave its culture to the Western world. The abolition of the Egyptian mysteries was to create an opportunity for the adoption of Christianity. European Christianity I'm talking about. This was the problem. The Roman government felt that Egypt was now conquered in arms and reduced to her knees, but in order to make the conquest complete, it would be necessary to abolish the mysteries which still control the religious minds of the ancient world. What are they saying? That they conquered us, but our deity was still in us.
Yes, right, yes.
But he had to make our enemy become our deity. What did I say? Our enemy had to become our deity. In order to make the enemy the deity, what did he do? Justinian said there must be a new world religion to enslave the African spirit, because as long as that deity was in our own image, we were not completely slaved yet. So he said there must be a new world religion that is no different than Ronald Reagan, Clinton's, Bush, all those white boys, showing that the new world order in Justinian time is no different than today. Today is to order us off the planet. And people run around, what does the new world order mean? Hell, as long as they've been ordering you, you don't know? Got all conferences on the new world order. I mean, damn. So that's why white boys came in, Justinian, and chiseled out. They're going to talk about graffiti and defacement of America's temples and murals and so forth. Look what they did to your ancestral temples of the goddess Aset and the great god Hasseru. Why? Because your ancestors produced the first African god who gave forth of a virgin birth, the first goddess who gave forth an immaculate conception, the Sarah, the Son of God. They even tell you right here, for reverence for the Egyptian goddess Isis and her son Horus, shown at your right an Egyptian statue of the Ptolemy period, was easily converted to the veneration of Mary and Jesus. The 4th century fresco at the far left and the Madonna and Child adorned in the Coptic monastery. They said it was easily converted. So let's see how easy it was converted. Dr. John G. Jackson, in his book, Christianity Before Christ, tells us, and even Churchward tells us. Now, let's look at Horus. Horus had two mothers, Isis the virgin who conceived him, Nefertiti who nursed him. He was brought forth singly as one of the 5 brothers. Let's look at the life of Jesus. Jesus had two mothers, Mary the virgin who conceived him, and Mary, the wife of Cleopas, who brought him forth as one of her children. Gee, brother, can you be by the lens a little bit? I mean, I don't know if you can see us out of focus. I know I can see us out of focus. Horus was the son of Seth, his father on earth. Jesus was the son of Joseph, his father on earth. Let's look at Horus now. Horus was with his mother, the virgin, until 12 years old, when he was transformed into the beloved Son, the God, as the only begotten of the Father in heaven. Jesus remained with the mother, the virgin, up until the age of 12, when he left her to be about his Father's business. From 12 to 30 years of age, there is no record in the life of Horus. From 12 to 30 years of age, there is no record in the life of Jesus. And Horus at 30 years of age became a dog in his baptism by Anu. Jesus at 30 years of age was made a man in his baptism by John the Baptist. Horus in his baptism made his transformation into the beloved Son, the only begotten of the Father, the Holy Spirit, represented by a bird. Jesus in his baptism is hailed from heaven as the beloved Son and the only begotten of the Father, the God, the Holy Spirit, that is represented by a dove. That's why they tell you right here, it was easily converted to veneration to the Mary and Jesus. This is your goddess Aset, waiting for you to come back home. Yeah. Waiting for you to come back and pay homage to her. Yeah. This is where the story was copied and manipulated down through the ages. In fact, she was worshipped throughout Europe during what is called the Herculaneum worship of Isis. So even throughout Europe at one time, they worshipped her. And now she's waiting for you to come back. Waiting for you to come back and pay homage to her. Waiting for you to open up your African ancestral genetic memory bank and let your story come in. What makes the European Jesus and Mary more sacred than your ancestors, Madonna and Child? Tell me, what makes the European Mary and Jesus more sacred than this?
No comparison.
Spiritual enslavement makes the European Mary and Jesus more sacred than your ancestors. How could the European Mary and Jesus pictures be sacred when your ancestors had it 4,100 years BC? Now, the question, what does this one really mean?
Oh, no.
What does this one really mean? You see the Klan right here? And the pure white baby just wants that peace. I'm going to take care of everything. We're going to get this thing together here. What does the white Mary and Jesus really mean? Oh, y'all don't want to know. I didn't run over time. The Kuma, you want to turn on the lights? They can't handle it.
Gotta go to Reverend Chicken. Drink some of that water.
How many people want to know what the real Mary and Jesus really mean? This side over here wants to know. This side don't want to know. Now, no, if you still want to keep your Mary and Jesus, this is the time to exit, please. Please exit now. Okay, brother, let's change the carousel. Everybody want to know. All right, we're going to find out what does this real white Mary and Jesus really mean.
This concludes Christianity, the Stolen Religion from Africa, Part 1.
All right, we're going to go into that. And now we're going to continue that on another time. So I'm glad that you guys were here. And we're going to go ahead. We gave you Part 3. And I know you guys want to see what's cracking on the next one, because this thing is powerful. It's very powerful. Absolutely. If it stays like this and it's working, we might go into the next part tomorrow. Just kick it right back off. And then just let it run. I want to get my stand set up right too. I don't have my original stand that I had that I can keep it up there. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know where the hell it is, but it's pissing me off. I can't find it. Yeah, well, see, they actually go on these tours. You know, and they actually go there to give you visual. They don't just make this up. They actually take these trips and go. And they explain to you what's really going on there. This is how I learned a lot. There's a lot of brothers out there that's educating people. Yeah, so we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to try to keep it going. It's a lot of deep information.